Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
You make decisions about your health every day, from nutrition to medication to whether you should go out and race on an injured knee or ankle. Today, Joe interviews Dr. Talya Miron-Shatz, author of Your Life Depends on It, What You Can Do to Make Better Choices About Your Health. They talk about a lot of things, but especially the 3 key questions you need to ask your doctor anytime you're making a medical decision. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com.
Joe Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan on the Spartan Up podcast. I got a special guest here from Israel, Dr. Talya. Dr. Talya just wrote a book on what you call it, Your Life Depends on It, what you could do. I don't want to screw it up. What you can
to make better choices about your health.
Yeah, and so how could I not make the best choices about my own health, Dr. Talya? Come on. I know what's best for me. How could I possibly screw that up?
As you so eloquently put it, you can screw that up in a number of ways, actually. And I want to say before I start, I didn't write a book to blame people or to say, come on, you're not good at this or you're not good enough as a person to be doing this. I wrote it because it's really hard. Making health and medical choices is very hard. I'm going to explain why in a second. And I want people to know that everybody experiences this difficulty. In fact, because I wanted to illustrate this, I spoke to doctors about their own experiences as patients. And they find it difficult too. So let's talk about what's so hard about it. So the first thing is you receive a lot of information. And a lot of it is in medicalese. When you go to the doctor's office and they talk to you about various things that you don't necessarily understand, which is fine because you're not a doctor. And even if you are, maybe you're sitting there and you're scared and you're feeling pain and it's hard. So the first thing is that we don't really understand. What do? We don't like being in a position where we don't understand. We have 2 ways of thinking. Maybe you've read, I've worked with Daniel Kahneman at Princeton University. Maybe you've read his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. So he talks about 2 ways that we use for thinking. We use system 1. It's like quick, it's like, which juice should I get? You could spend 45 minutes in front of the fridge, or you could say, I feel like beets and carrots. Okay, done. That was a quick and dirty decision based on not a lot of information and not a lot of emotion. Great. But not great when you're making a medical choice. So when you make a medical important choice, you should be using system 2, which is slower, more elaborate, more data-based. The problem is you get information that's hard, that you don't necessarily understand. You might be freaking out. What do? You switch back to system 1. And you make a quick and dirty decision over something that is very, very important for you. So what do? You base your decision off of things like, is this natural? Is this organic? Is this medical? People say medical, like the plague. Okay, I'm not saying everything we do should be medical, but if you break your arm, you're going to run to the hospital. You're not going to look for, you're not going to wave sage around it. You're going to want a medical doctor or a medical technician to fixate your arm so it's not broken until the end of time. So when we only focus on one label, one word, the simple and emotional, we might be doing ourselves harm.
I remember I had a career on Wall Street for quite some time. And I remember there was a saying on Wall Street that most people spend more time researching their vacations than they do investing their money. And so what you're describing sounds exactly like that. I mean, if you invest your money with very little research, most people probably, as you found when you did do very little research regarding their own health and wellness. But to your point, especially in this new world of social media, you don't even know what's real and what isn't. I think I have a handle on things, and then I see a piece of news and I'm like, is that real? Is it fake? I don't even know.
It's very hard. It's very hard. First of all, I love what you say. And it makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's terrible, but when you want to go on vacation, you say, oh, I love the beach. This one's hilly. This one's sandy. This one's rocky. You understand what's going on. When you talk about investment, there are all kinds of professional terms that you may not understand. And there's something else that creeps in. And it's right there front and center in our medical decisions. And that's uncertainty. You're not sure. What's going to happen? Oh, I don't know. I might make a killing on Bitcoin, but then again, maybe Bitcoin will go down. I don't know. And there's a risk, right? You could lose your money. And that is actually a lot like medical decision making. So it's complicated. There are risks. There's uncertainty. What do? You resort to system one and you either just ignore it or default, or you just think about other things or make a decision like in a quick and dirty way.
I was in a bad car accident 15 years ago. I was thrown out the window of the car, and my leg was ripped out of my hip. And aside from being scared out of my mind and being in a lot of pain, I was very focused on how do I keep running? How do I keep cycling and swimming and doing all these crazy things? I don't want my life to change, right? And I went to different doctors immediately. The next day, I started seeing doctors, and almost every doctor I met, 4 or 5 of the best hospitals in New York City, I was told I was barely going to walk. I was probably going to need a crutches or something. And I kept going to doctors until I found the answer I wanted to hear. And that doesn't make, you tell me, but that doesn't make my decision-making process right. I was looking for what I wanted to hear, and I finally found a hospital for special surgery, Dr. Sue, and he took a completely different approach. He said, it reminds me of a famous athlete who got hurt, Bo Jackson. Here's what Bo did wrong. Here's what I would suggest. It might not work, but I don't think it'll do any more damage. And I followed the protocol, and I did 14 Ironman that year. And so, but that might not have been the outcome. The other outcomes from the other 3 doctors was for me to completely change my life in another way. And I don't know if that was the right process or not, but right, because I could have got bad information.
You could have, but I think you did 2 things that were remarkable, that were great, and everyone should learn from. So the first thing you did is, you kept on researching, but you went to credible sources. You went to see a doctor, a genuine medical doctor. You didn't go see a quack. And that makes a huge difference. And the other thing, and I think, people listening to Spartan, that would resonate with them immensely, is you were willing to put in a lot of hard work. I bet your rehabilitation did not involve lying in bed, watching TV and having marshmallow. I bet there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears there. And that is something, it's not so much medical, it's not so much in my realm, it's more in the lifestyle and healthy living realm. But that's crucial. And when I work, say, with employees, with employers, it's front and center to what people need to do. They need to put in the work. I mean, I swim. I'm not a fantastic swimmer, but I swim almost every day. When I don't swim, I do Pilates, I do yoga. It's a machine. Our bodies are a machine. I think you were in a terrible car accident. Had you not been an athlete to begin with, your outcomes would probably have been a lot different. So you were taking very good care of this machine that you expect to carry you to old age and enjoy and in running.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. As you described that, I think about another incident I had later in life where I was in a hospital in Japan.
We'll be right back to this interview, but first a message from today's sponsor, DUROLANE. You know that knee pain can really slow you down. Sometimes that knee pain is due to osteoarthritis, a disease that affects some 14 million Americans. Learn about osteoarthritis knee pain and how to alleviate it at oakneepainrelief.com. You'll find information there about non-surgical, non-opioid treatments for osteoarthritis knee pain that may help delay the need for knee surgery. One treatment you'll find there is DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months of relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. It's indicated for the treatment of mild to moderate osteoarthritis knee pain when conservative treatments have not worked. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. Full prescribing information is at DUROLANE.com. Spartans say no to limits. You can learn more at oakneepainrelief.com. That's oakneepainrelief.com. All right, back to the interview.
I think about another incident I had later in life where I was in a hospital in Japan, and I remembered what I did that I just described to you, which was blood flow. Circulation and blood flow, according to Hospitals for Special Surgery and Dr. Sue, we have to get blood every single day to my hip, because if we didn't, there was a chance my hip would die. And so when I had the situation 10 years later in Japan, I couldn't speak Japanese. I was in a hospital in Japan, and I said, blood flow. I got to do what they taught me back in New York 10 years earlier. And I did it, and it worked. And I think at a bare minimum, but you tell me if I'm wrong, at a bare minimum, we have to move every day. Like you said, you swim every day. We have to move every day.
So the best medicine is preventive medicine, right? And that's a whole approach that I think sometimes we're unaware of. I mean, we become aware of things when we get sick, but then it's like, hey, you've been neglecting your body for a while, man. I mean, sometimes just bad things happen, but sometimes if you do not take care of this wonderful machine that is your body, there will be consequences. And this happens with lifestyle. This also happens with adherence to medication, which is a huge issue. We're prescribed medication, and half the time people don't take it as prescribed because their bodies seem to be telling them things. But it's like you and Japanese. I bet the Japanese people at the hospital were telling you things you didn't understand. And sometimes our bodies are speaking to us in a language that we don't understand. So 2 examples. One is people who have atrial fibrillation, which means there's irregular heartbeat or their hearts beat too fast. They're prescribed medication. So they don't feel the atrial fibrillation and they don't feel the benefit of the medication. And they could say, well, it's my body. I'm not feeling it. The doctors don't know me. Nothing is wrong with me. I'll quit the medication. And if anything goes wrong, I'll go back on it. Guess what? You quit the medication, you could have a stroke. Ouch. Nobody wants to have a stroke, right? So that decision to just not go on the information your doctor gave you is not great. And again, as I said, I'm not blaming anyone. I think it's very difficult. It's difficult emotionally when someone says, you think you're so young and healthy. Well, guess what? You have atrial fibrillation, and here's the medication, which you're going to have to take for the rest of your life. Whoa, that's a lot to take in. I know. So one thing that I propose is for people to ask 3 questions. I wrote them down in my book, Your Life Depends on It, because it does, really, what you can do to make better choices about your health. And the questions are, I call them ask about what matters. What are the risks? What are the benefits? And what are the alternatives? So you're prescribed something for your atrial fibrillation, and you don't really know what this all means, but what are the risks? Ask the doctor. What are the risks of this atrial fibrillation, whatever? And the doctor says, a stroke. You're like, oh my God, no, I don't want to have a stroke. What are the benefits? No benefits to atrial fibrillation. And what are the alternatives to the medication? Maybe there are some, and maybe there aren't. And that's fine. That's, if this is what you have to do, then this is what you have to do. And I guess, again, Spartans, they're troopers. They have to do things, and they do them. They don't always like them, but they understand why they're doing them. So if you remember to ask about risks and benefits and alternatives, you're in a very good place. I particularly like the alternatives question because it puts you in a position where you're not undermining the doctor's authority. You're just saying, what's the alternative? And that's a legitimate question. So doctors may not volunteer that information, but they don't want to flat out lie. If you ask them, is there an alternative? They're not going to say no. I want to say one more thing about us being so empowered in our medical decisions. Sometimes it doesn't serve us well. And the example is that doctors confess to overprescribing, and they overprescribe medication and sometimes procedures, which sounds crazy, but it happens. And the top three reason for this, one is worse than the other, really. One is money. They make money off of things, and therefore they prescribe them. That's the first reason. The second reason is because patients are asking for it. They say, could I have an MRI? Or I want to take this or that pill, or shall we do this and that? It's like, I started out with, we're healthcare consumers. So, I'm a consumer, I'm the client. The client's always right. Give me what I want. But is it really what's best for me? And that's a great question. And the third reason is doctors are afraid of being sued. So basically, we have to be so smart and so careful when we're asking for things. We have to really know what we're talking about, because we are kind of on our own here. And that's a little bit scary. And, it connects with what you were saying about social media. So who do I trust? Who do I follow? The word trust is just front and center to this entire discussion. If I don't just trust my doctor, I'm not going to go with what they tell me. And I have to decide who I trust. And I have to, base my decision ideally off of cues that are meaningful. It's not just the person who speaks with the most authoritative tone or who promises me the most, because guess what? Sometimes we would like for reality to be great and for wonderful promises to be given, but that's not always the case. You can't always deliver on the promise that everything's going to be great and there's going to be a lot of certainty. So much as we love that sort of rhetoric, we also need to be a little bit weary of it.
I love risks, benefits. I call it upside, downside decision making. What's my upside? What's my downside? And then I love the third question is so important. What are potential alternatives? And when I think back to that example I gave where my leg came out of my hip, the final doctor said, look, there's no downside to what we're going to do. The upside is that we save, right? The upside is we save your hip. And certainly the alternative is you just decide to live with crutches. So those were it was an easy choice for me. All right, we're going to do the work. We're going to do some serious work, and it involved a lot of Pilates. I would think, you tell me, but I would think, especially around COVID, most people, including myself, even subconsciously, find the answers they want on the internet to confirm their own biases.
There's something that's called the confirmation bias. And what it means is that we seek information to support our hypothesis. Hypothesis is like a big word. We seek information to support what we think. And whatever doesn't support what we think, we don't like that. We dismiss that, we discredit that, we ignore that. And now in the age of social media, we can go to our own little echo chamber where people who think like us talk the same as we do and ignore or belittle or discredit opposing evidence. So we do that all the time, and that doesn't necessarily help us, I think of people who aren't vaccinating for COVID, and I know they have their reasons, and I know they're afraid about their health, and maybe they mistrust pharmaceutical companies, and maybe they think that if they live a healthy lifestyle and eat organic, etc., they're immune. They're not immune. Nobody's immune. Sorry, guys. But if they only look at information that supports these claims and ignore, for example, the fact that 250 people die of COVID in Texas every day, then that's hurting their health. And I think really the important thing is we need to put our egos aside and our opinions aside and just think, what's the best thing for my health? Seriously, we have got to be stewards of our own health. That is vitally, crucially important. And sometimes we're not great at this. I mean, I do a lot of work with digital health companies and on adherence to medication platforms and wellness platforms. And we put in a lot of time, and they come to me because I sit at the intersection of health and behavioral economics and psychology. And they come to me to say, help us. Help us get employees use the diabetes app. Help us get people to adhere to their medication. Now, you would think, but wait, these people have diabetes. Don't they want to feel good? Don't they want to avoid complications? And the answer is, yeah, but in the moment, doing whatever's not great for your body can feel really good. And you go for a donut, then you go for another donut. Is this great if you're a diabetic? No, man. You don't need to be a doctor to know it's not great for you, but it feels good in the moment. And this need to just embed psychological mechanisms is, you could say, well, it's redundant, it's stupid, people should care about their health. And they do in theory, in a big sort of way. But then comes the donut. So we need to balance that. We need to always be mindful of the end game. And the end game is to live a happy and healthy life.
No, I'm with you 1,000%. I like to say, save the fun for later. A lot of people, most of the population around the world, they don't understand that maybe putting down the cookie right now, or maybe going to bed a little earlier than you'd like, or maybe working out a little more than you'd like, has long-term benefits that you don't feel today. But let me tell you something, because I watched my mother die, I watched my father die, so a lot of people die, as I'm sure you did, doctor. And I can guarantee you that on those last days and the last breaths, they wish they did a little more exercise. They ate a little, like once it's too late, it's too late. So you got to do the work. You got to do the work. Now, I remember a funny story to put a fine point on it. My mom did eat healthy. She did take care of herself. She just got a bad luck of the draw. She had cancer. But the last day of her life, she was vegan. I said, what do you want? What do you want, Mom? She said, I want a roast beef sandwich. So my point is, if you're really dying for that ice cream or that junk food or a lifestyle that's not keeping you healthy, save it for later. Have it on that last day. You don't need it now. Life is too short. We don't want to make it shorter.
No, we really don't. We really don't. By the way, I had this really nice association again with Japan. I think it's because I'm literally dying to go to Japan. So I'm holding on to every word from your experience there. I love that you talked about what you had to do. You started out with saying, I had to get circulation. Now, circulation is a pretty highbrow word. I have to get blood flow. And then you went to the action item. I have to move so I get blood into my hip, or I could lose it. Now, that is very simple language, and that's fantastic. It's fantastic because you can understand that. A 10-year-old could understand that, who has never had a biology class in their life. And I love it. We talk a lot, we, as in people like me who work in the healthcare space, talk a lot about health literacy. And that's the ability to understand medical information and to probe about medical information. And I could get there in a sec. But the truth is, even people with high health literacy, when in pain, that just goes out the window. They're like, oh, I'm in pain. Give me something. Who can blame them, right? So if you want to communicate with them or with any of us in our moments of pain, and some of us, even without pain, have low health literacy, it's important to keep the conversation at a fifth grader level. And that's not a way of insulting people. That's just a way of telling them, you have to move to get blood into your hip or you will lose it. Okay, I got it. That's another thing I want to say. Some of us feel really embarrassed asking questions. We feel that if we don't know something, it means we're dumb. We're ignorant. That's not true. We just don't know what we're being told. And it's actually our responsibility to ask the questions. It doesn't make us stupid. It makes us responsible. It's really important for me to say, because I know how embarrassed we can get in front of a physician. And even the mightiest people sometimes feel very deferent in front of a doctor. So I want to encourage everybody to really understand that it's hard, and to understand it's hard for everybody, and to, if you need a permission slip from me, to ask any question you want, and to even have the doctor write things down for you, because you may not understand what they're saying. You may not, if you're not writing it down, you'll forget it. If you do write it down, like I did when I interviewed one of my physician patients, I interviewed her and I got every term wrong except bronchitis, everything. I made atrocious spelling mistakes because she was talking about diseases that I'd never heard of, thankfully. So had I not written it down, I would not have been able to look it up, like ever. It would have been lost. And if she wasn't someone I was interviewing for my book, but rather my doctor telling me things, I would be like, go home and just be entirely clueless. So don't do that. Be a little bit more respectful of your body, and don't be ashamed of not knowing.
So Doc, to wrap it up, tell me if I have it correct. Number one, don't treat your body like a garbage pail. We have one shot at this, one chance, and you're going to have to treat it with the same respect you treat your vacations. Number two, do the research. Actually do the work. Find experts and consider both sides of the argument. Don't just find places where you hear what you want to hear.
Like on vacation, don't just look at the shiny pictures. Don't just look at who's screaming louder and who has a better tie. Look at the numbers, look at the evidence, look at the data, and weigh down seriously, because your life depends on it.
Like your life depends on it, and consider both sides of the argument. Just like when you read a book review, you read the good reviews and the bad reviews. So the upside and the downside, and then look at alternatives. Just make sure they're not crazy alternatives. We want some real medical professionals giving you advice. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you hear something that sounds way too sophisticated for you, you've never heard of before, dig in. Try to get it in plain English. And then once you get all that information, don't be afraid to do the work. You got to do the work. Unfortunately, that's just, nobody's going to do it for you. You got to do it. Did I get it right?
You most certainly got it right. And that's true in every domain of our life. And yes, we have to be good stewards of our health. We have to be responsible for it. We have to ask, and we do need help. And that's like a final nugget for me to say. I'm saying that because everyone listening to you, I'm sure, are very self-reliant and self-sufficient. And those are amazing traits. But we also need to take it up a notch in terms of who is helping us, because we can't do everything on our own. Because if your doctor only talks to you at the level of circulation and doesn't say, move your hip, get blood flowing there, then you may not understand what they're saying. So we need the medical system to help us with this. That's part of the reason why I wrote it. I wanted not just to talk to patients who feel sometimes ill-equipped and not doing great with their health, but also to talk to the systems and to doctors and say, you guys are accountable. It's on you. It's on the patients, obviously, but it's also on you to help them. They cannot do this on their own. So get your act together and really help people make better health and medical choices.
Doctor, you're awesome. How do people find the book?
So my name is Talya, with a Y, Miron-Shatz. The book is Your Life Depends on It, What You Can Do to Make Better Choices About Your Health, wherever books are sold. If anybody wants to ask me a question or to tell me what they thought about the book, I am at Talya, TALYA, MIRONSHATZ @gmail.com. This is obviously my last name and a great way to find the book. Please read it and give it to your loved ones, because seriously, your life depends on it.
I love it. I love you. The only other person in the entire world that gives out their email address like I do. It's awesome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com.